Good afternoon, Canisius High School community. It is Andy Deyell, your Vice President for Institutional Advancement, back with another episode of Conversations with Canisius, our regular web series where we check in with alums all over the United States and hear about what they've been up to since their time at Canisius High School. I am joined today all the way from Washington, D.C. By Andrew Clark from the class of 1994. Andrew is a partner at Ernst & Young, and he specializes in forensics and integrity. Andrew, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Andy. Hello, Canisius.
Yes, it's great. It's great to have you here today. Let's go back in time. Let's see, if you're class of 94, that means you came in as a freshman in 1990. Tell us a little bit about how you found out about Canisius High School and what led you to choose Canisius.
Well, actually, it's a family tradition in my family. My father and all my uncles went to Canisius, I guess back in the 60s. In early 70s, and actually they all had a reputation. My first day at Canisius as a freshman, I remember I was in Mr. Palisano's homeroom class, and he came up to me very first day of high school, and he said, "Is your name Clark?" And I said yes, and he said, "You're not going to be a pain in the ass like your father and all your uncles were, are you?" And I said, "No, sir. I'm a lot better behaved than they are." And that was my first day of high school, and so. I kind of went on from there because apparently my dad was okay, but my uncles, I guess, had quite a reputation for creating all sorts of mischief there. So
that's great. And while you're in your 4 years there, who were some of your? Aside from Mr. Palisano, who I also had for math, who are some of your the charismatic adults that sort of influenced you in your time there? And talk a little bit about sort of
Sure.
what clubs and what activities you might have been involved in.
Yeah. Sure. So I was, I guess the thing I did when I was there was I was the secretary of the student council, and I was also the editor-in-chief of the Citadel newspaper. And back then, when with the Citadel, I received kudos because I was the guy who actually brought it from us taking like typewritten columns and razor blades and cutting and laying it out on paper to actually using what was called WordPerfect and PageMaker at the time, which none of you will know about that are watching this. But I was the first one to kind of modernize that. And it's not like computers hadn't been around a little while, but Canisius was a little behind in the technology back then. I understand you all have drones and stuff now, so so I think you've come a long way. But yeah, so Citadel, I was student secretary, student body president secretary, and then. Just a bunch of other clubs and things. That was the great thing about Canisius is you could experiment and kind of they had a lot of different stuff you could try. And then as far as adults that were memorable and influential, really, it's hard not to pick just a few because there were so many. But I would say a few of my favorites were Father Nauman, Father Garaventa, I think Mr. O'Connor, who taught math. Sure. Also a big one. It's funny. I actually remember my math teacher, Mr. O'Connor. Like having him, and then my family used to vacation down at a place in Florida, and I remember walking along the beach in Florida and bumping into Mr. O'Connor, who happened to vacation in the same place that my family did. But yeah, obviously Father Sansamino, and who was a Spanish teacher at the time, and a homeroom teacher, but again has gone on to bigger and better things. Father Keenan, who was the president. So yeah, just a huge collection of influential people. And I think about them every day, honestly, and I'm not overstating that. The stuff they taught me then really stuck with me.
That's great. And after Canisius, talk a little bit about your undergraduate experience and then take us to your career at Ernst & Young.
Yeah, sure. So like everybody at a Jesuit preparatory school, I wanted to go to Georgetown. So it's a pretty popular draw. The Jesuit colleges kind of get you excited, or Jesuit high school kind of gets you excited about Jesuit colleges. And so I ended up at Georgetown, and just as a kind of a funny aside, my first day at Georgetown, they had a reception for students who had been at Jesuit prep schools. And so I went to this reception, and I met the president of the university. And I remember walking up to him and introducing myself. I said, "Hello, Father. This is Father O'Donovan. Leo O'Donovan is his name." And I met Father Donovan, and I said, "Hi, Father. Nice to meet you. My name's Andrew Clark." And before I could even finish my last name, he said, you went to Canisius High School, didn't you? And I said, yes. And they said, you had Father Nauman for English and Father Garventa for history. They told me to look out for you. And I was like blown away. I was like, oh my God, like I'm at one of the premier universities in the world. The president of the university knew my name before I even finished it and knew something about me because of where I came from. And it was just as a quick funny story about that. Father O'Donovan had a legendary memory. In fact, there's great stories President Clinton would tell about him and his memory, Father O'Donovan. They were friends. But I remember I became a campus paramedic. And I remember being in the ambulance one day, and Father O'Donovan walked by. The back of the ambulance was open, and I was bandaging up somebody's ankle. And he just popped his head in and he said, "Y'all don't need a priest, Andrew, do you?" And so the point is, he remembered my name, and we would have good talks all the time. And really it was kind of getting that foot in the door from Canisius, kind of understanding how again that Jesuit influence in really the happiness and effusiveness of meeting people who have a common thing in their background really was proven to me. That was a big lesson.
That's great. And that's like such a Jesuit thing, you meet this Jesuit, he knows all about you already, and you're just blown away by it. And that's part of what we experience in the community that we belong to when we're at Canisius. Pivot a little bit to Ernst and Young. What exactly is forensics and integrity, and sort of how did you get involved in that or passionate about that? Because you've been, correct me if I'm wrong, you've been doing that for a while.
Yeah, over 20 years at this point. So it was kind of roundabout. I actually, as I mentioned, I was an EMT and a medic in college. So I used to pass out at the sight of blood. And I was dared by my roommate. My college roommate dared me to take an EMT class when I was my first year at Georgetown. And I accepted the challenge. And not only did I kind of defeat my fears, I actually ended up teaching and directing that class and becoming an officer in that unit by the end of my time at Georgetown. And then I started thinking, my dad is a CPA and has an accounting firm in West Seneca. And so I was an accounting major at Georgetown, just in case everything kind of went south. I could always go work for Dad. But my mom was a nurse, and so she was always around medical stuff. And so I started thinking when I was at Georgetown, well, maybe I should explore some of this medical stuff, because I never really had thought about that. And so I was going back and forth between kind of medicine and accounting, like business and accounting and medicine. Ended up, like I said, spending time working in a hospital for a long time. Took a bunch of science classes, and I left college, and I was heavily recruited by an accounting firm called Arthur Andersen at the time, and they're no longer around. But at the time, Arthur Andersen was where everybody wanted to go who was an accounting major. Like, it was a real honor to be recruited by them. And so I ended up spending an extra year after I graduated, finishing my pre-medical classes, and I thought I should be an accountant because that's a family thing. And so I took the job offer from Arthur Andersen. I started working a year as a financial auditor, and I hated it. I did not like it at all. Like it just wasn't me. So I left there. I went back to school. I went up to Harvard for a year, and I studied physiology. And I applied to medical school after that. And I moved back to Washington after that. And I was kind of waiting around to see what happened with medical school applications. And I got a cold call from Ernst and Young, and they said, "Would you come talk to us about this group we have? It's called Forensics and Integrity Services." And we actually, need people who can read medical charts, and we look for like fraud on like Medicare submissions and that kind of thing. And I knew how to read a medical chart, and I knew, how kind of numbers worked and accounting stuff. And so they seemed to think I would be a good fit for that. And so I went in and talked to them, and I really had no interest in working for them because I had tried Big Four accounting and I didn't like it. But the people I interviewed with were incredibly dynamic. They actually reminded me a lot of the people I knew back in high school. I knew I would learn a lot from them, and they were super exciting. And they were like a small little group within a giant fishbowl of Ernst and Young that was doing really exciting things at the time. And so I decided to start to work for them, and I really enjoyed the work. They sent me all over the world. I've been to over 40 countries at this point to do our work. And it really involves, again, forensic accounting and looking for helping companies that either have had some sort of problem with fraud or are looking to set up their company in a way that they can detect fraud, and then also doing the investigations and kind of the prep work associated with that. And then I work a lot with our technology people who help set up, really complex kind of computer and digital tools for these companies to use. And I've been doing that now for over 20 years.
And so as you reflect back, right, over this long career that you've had, your time at
Yeah.
Georgetown, time at Harvard, all these, what are some of those lessons you took from Canisius High School that sort of impact your life today?
Well, I'll tell you the one biggest lesson, and I really, when you're there, it's hard to appreciate, but you hear things like we used to hear things all the time about. I think one of Father Nauman's favorite phrases was "pursue excellence. Nothing else is worth your time." And I took that one to heart. I'm sure I don't know if they're still using that one, but I know that the Jesuits have a bunch of them. But the concept of pursuing excellence in everything you do really, really struck hold with me. And what I mean by that is, like, when I go through my day, I don't care if I'm like clearing my lunch tray and making sure that the recycling goes where it's supposed to go, the garbage goes where it's supposed to go, and the tray goes where it's supposed to go. That's pursuing excellence. Like those little details, those little things. If you just get in the habit, like when I'm driving my car, like turning around a corner, like making sure I stay within the line, like those little things. If you just take care of those little things of pursuing excellence in the small stuff, the big stuff kind of takes care of itself. And I have found that to be very, very true. That's one. And then the second one is being a man for others, in really being unselfish in not only in business, but in your professional life, my marriage, my friendships. I constantly challenge myself to put others before myself and think of their needs before myself. And do I do it all the time? No. Do I have my moments of selfishness? Yes. But by and large, I feel like I really try to make sure other people are very well taken care of. And again, if you take care of others, they tend to take care of you, and it works very well. So for your future marriages, for your future relationships, for your future business colleague relationships, and that, I think those are just great things to take away. And those are things I learned at Canisius.
Those are great coaching tips. I mean, and you'll be happy to know, Andrew, that as you walk into Canisius High School and you walk into the classroom wing, hanging from the ceiling is a large sign that says, "Pursue excellence. Nothing else is worth your time." So it is still alive and well. And, Father Nauman's words still ring true.
Good.
And
excellent.
As you sort of look to the future, we have hopefully a lot of young alums that will be seeing these videos, trying to glean a little bit of wisdom from us as far as how to start a career, how to start a successful life.
Yeah.
What kind of advice would you impart on young people today, young alums and people who are just sort of starting out in the world?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I would say that you just can't be afraid to fail. And you can't be afraid you're going to get kicked in the head a few times, and you're going to get kicked in the stomach a few times. And life's going to do this to you in some capacity. And I think understanding that when you're going through a challenging time, or rejection, or disappointment, or tragedy, or any of those things, it's kind of a "this too shall pass" attitude. And then when it gets behind you, you can look back and you can say, "Wow, like I have a stronger character for having gone through that." And then when the next thing comes, you're better equipped to deal with it. And I'll just give you a quick example in my personal life. I was in a relationship with a girl. We were engaged. She decided that she wanted to move on, and didn't want to get married. And at the time, I was like crushed. My world was ending, right? And then fast forward a couple of years after that, I met my now wife, and who's a very successful physician. We have just a wonderful life. We travel all over the world. We have 2 wonderful dogs, one of which is asleep behind me. Live in a great house, and both have very rewarding careers, and are quite fulfilled. And I said to my wife the other day, I said, if I ever met my old fiance, like in an airport, and the 2 of us were there, like I would go up to her and I would thank her. I would thank her. I would be like, she was honest. It hurt at the time, but I learned from it, and I'm a better husband and person for that. And that's obviously a very personal experience from my own life. And there are professional examples from work where it's the same thing, where you get passed over for a promotion, or people give you some direct feedback that maybe you don't agree with, and once you get past the emotional jerk of that kind of thing, and you take some time and you think about it, and you're like, okay, yeah, that's fair. What can I learn from that, and how can I apply it going forward? And then the next time it happens, it's a lot less painful. So I'd encourage you all to kind of think about making sure to take the risks, to go out there and fail a few times, and you'll learn from that. You'll learn from that, but just always have a good positive attitude, and try and keep a good mental attitude about it. And again, things will work out just fine.
I've always found too, Andrew, that when looking back, these oftentimes the most disappointing things that happen to us, if given the proper amount of time, you can reflect on them, and they always end up becoming, in some ways, the most important things that happen to us, and they propel us to future things, and they give us a little bit of wisdom as we move along in life. And if you let those things breathe a little bit, you find out that they may have been disappointing in the moment, as you said, but they become incredible catapults in our life that lead us oftentimes to bigger things.
Yeah.
So
they do. Yeah.
No, thanks for sharing that. And so lastly, just, future goals for Andrew Clark and family. What do you guys, as you look, near term, longer term, what do you have as some goals that you want to achieve before you have a wonderful retirement and end up on a beach somewhere, I'm sure?
It's funny. It's tough for me to think about goals. Like if I have, if I identify some things I'm bad at, I would say long-term goals are tough for me just because I over the years, again, I've learned to kind of live in the moment and be in the present. I remember when I made partner a few years ago, somebody asked me the same question, and I was like, well, wait a minute, I just made partner. Like, let me enjoy this. Like, let me figure this out. Let me learn from it. Let me grow. So, I think my long-term goal is to stay more in the present. I would say that's kind of probably number one. But beyond that, recently I've been given some additional leadership in my firm. So like I'm now the office managing partner for our Washington office, which is like 100 people or so. So I have to take care of their needs and make sure that they're taken care of. And so really I think personally, again, my wife and I look forward to continuing hopefully after all the COVID stuff settles down a little, getting back to traveling. I have in Japan that I miss, that I'm looking to go over there and spend some time, and really have a good network of friends and family that I've been a little disconnected to, as we all have recently. So just getting back out and meeting people. But again, the biggest thing I can say is just really, the goals are important, and setting a path and a course is important, but really, don't be in too much of a rush to look too far ahead. Just take the days as they come. And enjoy it. And the last piece of advice I give to everybody is, get some stories. Like when you're headed out into life, like it's really easy to just sit and work all the time. And again, I'm a successful person. I was a good student. I did all that. But what I soon realized is like the people who kind of sit and work all the time and just do like their actual, kind of formal work, they miss out on some things, and getting out into the cities that you're in or wherever you happen to be, and get yourself some stories, because as you get older, certainly a valuable tool in business and also in your relationships is being able to relate to people and to have empathy with people, and also to be able to share what you're about. And if you just kind of sat and studied, or sat and did your work, or just did that and that alone, frankly, that doesn't make you a very interesting person. What makes you an interesting person is kind of getting out there in life, trying things, again, failing, and doing things that get you some stories to tell. And I think you'll find that the people who have stories are the people that people want to hang around with, they want to do business with, they want to get married to, they want to have kids with. And I think getting yourself some stories is a good piece of advice.
That's a great piece of advice. And thank you so much for spending the time with us today and giving us a little bit of a window into what you've been up to. We look forward to keeping in touch, and we wish you the best of luck. And I'm going to go out and get me some stories.
Great. Yeah, well, I look forward to it, and I'll see everybody on campus at some point, and have a great summer, winter, holiday, whenever you're viewing this. Yeah, take care.
Andrew, be well.